So let me get this straight. When black people have been screaming out racism for the past few centuries, well, let's talk a little more recent about Trayvon Martin. Many in the black community were saying how it was wrong that Zimmerman could follow Trayvon Martin, bother the young man, harass him, and ultimately kill this child in cold blood. Remember, Trayvon Martin was a 17-year-old child. Then remember how he, being Zimmerman, walked around for 2 months without being arrested. Then he gets airtime in the media and gets donations. The media did everything they could to destroy the dead victim, being Trayvon Martin, and his image. They were saying that he should have not worn a hoodie. But remember, this is a rainy night in Sanford, Florida. Many said that he should not have been outside at that time of night. Now remember, this is during the NBA All-Star game. Halftime, as a matter of fact, so it was around 7 or 8 o'clock, maybe in the Eastern time, but no later than that. And of course, this is something that all teenagers and adults do. They go to the store and get a damn snack or something to drink. Big deal, right? Now, when blacks called out the unjust treatment, you had a lot of white supremacists that, dismissed it. Like, we don't know what's about race, this and that. You had a couple of, bootlick and Sambos out there that did the same thing. So, of course, think about, what happened with Jordan Russell Davis being murdered by Michael Dunn. Had the audacity to tell these young black males to turn their music down, talk to them like he's some kind of overseer. When they respond, he said, "Oh, you have a lot of nerve," and decides he wants to kill them. Shoots the car up. They drive away. And of course, Jordan Russell Davis ends up dying from the bullet. So he was murdered by Michael Dunn. Let's not get it twisted. And then think about how people were saying, "Oh, well, maybe when they drove away, they threw some guns away, then came back around." Like, are you really serious? If they had guns, why wouldn't they have used them against Michael Dunn? So let's not get into this. I mean, it's, of course, who said that, very offensive, using those negative things that they want to believe about all black folks. And they know this, but this is all a part of the war strategy. I mean, come on, black folks are under attack. Anybody who don't understand that now, hey, at this time in 2015, no point in really talking to you right now. Okay? Then, of course, let's look at what happened with Mike Brown. Murdered by Darren Wilson. You had many people who were there at the scene of the event that said, hey, Mike Brown had his hands up when Darren Wilson was shooting him. He was trying to get away from Darren Wilson. Darren Wilson shot this young man, and his hands were up. He was already on the ground. Darren Wilson just kept going. Even though you had people who were there at the event, this unfortunate event that took place, that said that Mike Brown had his hands up, there were people that said, no, we don't know that. We don't know all the facts. Okay. Yeah, people that saw Eric Garner get murdered on camera. The world saw Eric Garner get murdered on camera. And even though we saw that, the same folks, along with their little Sambos, white supremacists and coons, and of course the coons really aren't anything more than white supremacist reserves, and they run past interference for them. They stated that Eric Garner did not get choked, even though we saw the man get choked on camera while saying he couldn't breathe. Daniel Pentalio choked him to his death. Let's not forget about McKinney, Texas. We had the race soldier with the police officer uniform on by the name of Eric Caseboat, who slammed the black girl to the ground, pulled out his gun on the other unarmed black teens. All these people were unarmed. Yet you had the same group of people trying to justify that this underage child slammed to the ground was what should have happened because of her quote-unquote mouth. What did she say that was so wrong to make him put hands on her? What happened to this not putting hands on women, let alone underage children? This is a young lady who had on a bikini. The way he was throwing her on the ground, she could have been exposed. Then what? Roland Martin had to call out the women's libs, women's rights movement, or NOW, as you call them, National Organization of White Women, basically. So they should add another W because that's really what it's about. Because it was Roland Martin that had to call them out in order for them to even consider saying anything about what happened in McKinney, Texas. They said a little bit and they backed off, and that was it. Mighty funny how the Tracy Albritton, that's the other lady who, the white woman who made some racial comments to the teens and ended up, you saw on video where she was attacking one of the black girls. She was hitting her. And Gloria Allred ends up representing her. Wow. So here you go, Miss Gloria Allred went after Michael Jackson, Chris Brown, Floyd Mayweather. Oh, just a long list of people, black men. She just loves it. That's Gloria Allred to us. Now, people defended his actions and her actions. And of course, as you see, Gloria Allred is defending her actions. You even had white kids on the scene. The young white guy named Brandon Brooks, shout out to him for his actions for doing that. He mentioned how, he felt invisible because the black kids were the ones getting targeted. They weren't really bothering the white kids. It was all of the black kids. Think about when Dominique Strauss-Kahn was accused of sexual assault by Nifisatu Diallo. Please forgive me if I'm not saying her name properly. The black woman who was his maid. And there were people who had reservations about that. Like, wait a minute. Raping a white man, raping a black woman. And of course, this has happened, a lot in history. But it doesn't get the legs, So anyway, because of her alleged immigrant status, they felt like, oh, well, if she's not 100 about that, then how do we know she's 100 about what happened with Dominique Strauss-Kahn? Dismissed it. Now, Dr. William Cosby gets accused by white women of rape with no proof. This happened 40, 50 years ago. Jim Crow era, blatant Jim Crow era 1960s, which now, of course, is starting to get more blatant now, as we have seen. And everybody wants to get on the bandwagon and go after Cosby and shut him down. Pulling his shows off, canceling appointments. He had a deal for another TV show he was going to do with Netflix, I believe. And, of course, now that's not happening. So these women came out and attacked him. Now, everybody's going to say that Hannibal Buress is the reason. Hannibal Buress was the excuse, because I'm pretty sure if Hannibal Buress said, hey, Darren Wilson is a murderer and that case needs to be reopened, they're not going to reopen it. If he said George Zimmerman is a murderer and that case needs to be reopened, they're not going to reopen it. If he says Dan Pantaleo needs to be checked on, or we need to look back into Dominique Strauss-Kahn, they're not going to reopen it because of what he said. But because he said something about Bill Cosby, somebody who they were already after, of course, they're like, oh, this is perfect timing. So, got to think about this. Let's just say 40, although it's more than 40, but when it was 40 white women that came after Bill Cosby, now everybody wants to say something. Yeah, millions of blacks who make complaints about racism in this country. And everyone wants to dismiss it. 40 white women have an allegation and the world stops. Of course, I know it's more than 40, so whatever. But still, that doesn't compare to the number of blacks that have talked about racism in this country and people dismiss it. So, it makes you wonder. 40 white women say that blacks are dealing with racism. Will the world stop if they were to do that? When I talked about Trayvon, Mike Brown, the Eric Casebolt situation, let's say Renisha McBride, let's talk about Tamir Rice, Walter Scott, John Crawford. Oh my God, there's so many other cases out there. Oscar Grant. Did Johannes Mercilessly get enough time? So, 40 white women. If 40 white women put the world on notice and said, hey, white supremacy is wrong. It's really hurting blacks in all levels, politically, economically, educationally, socially.